National political reporter for The Washington Post, James Hohmann, joins me now. James, good to see you. What impact do you think the president's initial comments at the UNGA about reforming the UN to reach its, quote, full potential will have?
These are relatively reassuring comments. I think that the expectations of world leaders are fairly low for President Trump. I think that people hope that he sticks to script and stays on his teleprompter tomorrow when he addresses the General Assembly, that this isn't some kind of rally where people are going to be cheering him. I think relatively, people are sort of happy to hear what they're hearing. The other kind of catchphrase that Trump had as he came out of the Security Council a little bit ago was, "We're going to make the United Nations great." And he said, not make the United Nations great again, like we're going to make America great again. We're going to make the UN great. So what, that kind of maybe sounds like a catchphrase, but what foreign diplomats hear is reassurance that the U.S. isn't going to try to pull out of the UN, that Trump is sort of coming around and recognizes to some degree at least the need to nod to multilateralism. And this follows the same pattern we saw with NATO. Trump, as a candidate, said NATO was worthless, that it was obsolete, was the word he used all the time.
Right.
Then he comes into office and basically does a 180.
Hey, James, hold on for 1 second. We just want to go to the president live. He's with the Prime Minister of Israel right now. Let's listen in for just a second.
We're going to be discussing many things, among them peace between the Palestinians and Israel will be a fantastic achievement, and we are giving it an absolute go. I think there's a good chance that it could happen. Most people would say there's no chance whatsoever. I actually think with the capability of Bibi and, frankly, the other side, I really think we have a chance. I think Israel would like to see it, and I think the Palestinians would like to see it. And I can tell you that the Trump administration would like to see it. So we're working very hard on it. We'll see what happens. Historically, people say it can't happen. I say it can happen. But I just want to say, Mr. Prime Minister, it's an honor to have you. Thank you.
Great to see you.
Thank you
very much. See you. Thank you. Mr. President, it's great to see you again. I want to say that under your leadership, the alliance between America and Israel has never been stronger, never been deeper. I can say this in ways that people see and in ways that they don't see. So I want to thank you for that. Equally, I look forward to discussing with you how we can address together what you rightly call is the terrible nuclear deal with Iran, and how to roll back Iran's growing aggression in the region, especially in Syria. As you said, we will discuss the way we can seize the opportunity for peace between Israel and the Palestinians and between Israel and the Arab world. I think these things go together, and we look forward to talking about how we can advance both. Finally, we're going to be speaking tomorrow at the UN. And I want to say that under President Trump, America's position towards Israel at the UN has been unequivocal. It's been strong. It's got both clarity and conviction. And I want to thank you on behalf of the people of Israel and Israel's many friends around the world. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
And also, as you well know, this is the Jewish New Year this week. So I want to wish you, the Jewish community of America, Jews everywhere, people everywhere, Shana Tova, happy, healthy New Year. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. President, are you going to Mr. President, do you plan to stay in the Iranian nuclear deal?
You'll see very soon.
Sorry?
You'll be seeing very soon.
Will you be promoting your plan? Will you be promoting the ultimate deal plan?
We're talking about it constantly. Constantly. We're talking about plans constantly. You'll see.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you soon.
President Trump, in his first face-to-face meeting of the UN General Assembly with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, I want to bring back Washington Post national political reporter James Hohmann for his take on that brief exchange. James, Prime Minister Netanyahu said, with you as president, Israel's relationship with the U.S. has never been stronger or deeper. He seems to think that he's on the same page with this president. What's going to be on the agenda at their meeting?
Well, yeah, absolutely, Stephanie. From as far as the UN is concerned, Trump has been very strong on Israel. They're very excited. Remember, just before Barack Obama left office, the United States abstained from a UN resolution condemning Israel that upset a lot of prominent Jewish leaders.
For its settlement building, just to be clear
exactly.
there. Yep.
Thank you. Yep, absolutely. Very important. And so I think Netanyahu does feel like Trump is an ally on the stuff that they care about most at their meetings this week. Netanyahu and his allies also recognize that flattery is a good way to kind of direct President Trump the right way. Unlike a lot of people, Netanyahu has been willing to praise him in a very strong way, as we just heard. And what you also heard there at the end, when I know there were all those shouted questions from those reporters, was the question, is the U.S. going to pull out of the Iran deal? That is a big question that a lot of people are paying attention to for any signs in tomorrow's speech. That's something Netanyahu very much wants the United States to do. And it's something that somewhat surprisingly President Trump has resisted thus far. A lot of his advisors don't want to sort of have Iran start their nuclear program once again with the problem going on in North Korea. And Trump's answer in response to those shouted questions was, we're talking about this all the time. We'll have something for you soon. Now, in any ordinary presidency, you would say, wow, that's big news. With Trump, that's sort of his standard answer when he's asked that question is, we'll have something soon. We're talking about it. We'll get back to you. And so I think, you know, historically you would make a big deal out of that, but it's not necessarily meaning that we're about to withdraw from that nuclear deal.
Especially since the Trump administration has twice certified already to Congress in his time in office that Iran is meeting its end of the bargain when it comes to that deal. But speaking of Iran, one of the other signatories, remember it's a multilateral deal with Iran, is France. And he's also meeting with the French leader Emmanuel Macron later this afternoon. Climate change will also be on that agenda. And he may have a very different view than Netanyahu on both of those, well, especially on the Iran deal.
Right. Yeah, well, the climate change is an interesting one, too. We haven't talked about it yet, but over the weekend, there was this Wall Street Journal report that said the United States was saying that we're actually going to stay in the Paris climate deal after all. We couldn't confirm that. The administration quickly pushed back on it. Trump has now pushed back on it. And this morning, there was a breakfast meeting for some senior officials from key countries. And H.R. McMaster, the national security advisor, at that private breakfast, we're told on good authority, said the U.S. is not going to stay in the Paris deal. We're still planning to withdraw. And so that is sort of consistent with what they've said. But that's another big point of tension going into this meeting with Macron. And not just with the French, but a lot of other European countries really see the United States as abdicating our leadership in the world by pulling out of this big deal. And
it seems like Macron, who earlier this year tried to convince Trump to get back into the Paris climate agreement, right, that he also believes that flattery may lead a great impression on the president and may lead him to reverse his stance. All right, let's talk about North Korea. Right. There are several world leaders that are absent from the UNGA this week, most notably Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping. What does their absence mean for possible progress this week on this most urgent of issues, North Korea?
Well, last week, the United Nations Security Council passed very strong sanctions. They were watered down a little bit in order to get unanimous support, including from the Russians and the Chinese. The fact that the presidents of those two countries aren't here, in some ways, there are top kind of U.S. government people who are saying privately they're very happy Vladimir Putin's not there. They get to avoid another photo op with Trump and Putin, which was distracting at the summit in July. But yes, it does mean there's not going to be high-level conversations about how to tackle North Korea. You know, the U.S. obviously and correctly recognizes that China is really the key to pressuring North Korea. So I think what we're going to see is there's a lot of bilateral meetings that are scheduled on the sidelines, including with Shinzo Abe, the president of Japan, and other U.S. allies, all sort of talking about what is it that we can do. In fact, as we know, last Thursday night, North Korea fired a ballistic missile over Japan, the second time they've done so in the last, I think, month. And so there is this desire among American officials, we've got to do something. We know we don't have a lot of tools in our toolbox, but we've got to do something. And it will be interesting to see the dynamic with the Asian leaders who are not China.
Yeah. President Trump's America First slogan hasn't gone away, but maybe at odds, some would say, with the UN's ethos. What do you expect to hear from him when he delivers his first UN address tomorrow?
Well, so we're expecting to hear some details and a preview from the White House very soon. We think he is going to focus on North Korea. We expect, but we never know for sure, that he's going to stay pretty close to the script. There will be some strong rhetoric, but we're not sure how strong and kind of what meat there really is on the bone. He obviously has sort of gone out there and said there's going to be fire and fury on North Korea if they continue to be aggressive. Since he made that statement a month ago, there have been multiple new tests, including potentially the test of a hydrogen bomb by the North Koreans. So that's the challenge for Trump, is he can, talk a big game during his speech tomorrow, and he probably will, but we need to be willing to back that up with action, and that hasn't been clear thus far. So I think the president might try to do something to reassure the world that he's not just all talk.
James Hohmann, national political reporter for the Washington Post. James, thanks a lot.
My pleasure.